Thank you to our viewers tuning into another CSE listed issuer update. Today we are speaking to James Cross. James is the president and CEO of EPR Resources Inc. It's on the CSE, of course. The symbol is EPR. James, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I hope you're well.
Yeah, doing well. Thanks, Anil. It's good to be here and see you again.
Absolutely. It's always great. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the overall market, global supply of lithium, graphite. Graphite is something that you and your team are focused on, and China and what's happening there. Can you maybe just put it into layman's terms for us?
Sure. Well, China just introduced some new export restrictions on flake graphite, which is the more desirable graphite, natural graphite for batteries. And but before that, the graphite market was already running into issues of supply or demand outstripping supply. So it appears, according to research that we read, especially that of Benchmark Intelligence, that sometime late last year, demand started to outstrip graphite supply. So in the West, probably, meaning, like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the US, and Western Europe, very little money has gone into developing or delineating graphite resources in the last 70 years. Graphite was, it mostly came from places where you have access to very inexpensive labor. So graphite was coming from China, India, Madagascar, Mozambique, and a little bit from Brazil. So the West itself has not really seen much development of graphite resources. I think the last mine in the U.S. closed in 1960 or thereabouts, and there's only one producing mine in Canada, which is a pretty small one and produces only or less than 1% of global supply.
So Quebec, which is the region that you and your team are focused on, advancing projects, exploring and advancing projects, I should say. Why is that region so important when it comes to?
Well, for one thing, it's just the place around North America that seems to have one of the best endowments of graphite from a mineral standpoint. And also there is the newly discovered, and when I say newly discovered, I mean like 20 years, the newly discovered Tetepisca Graphite District, which is located in a place where you have amazing infrastructure, but almost nobody living nearby. So Quebec in that sense is very important. Also, it's positioned geographically very well. Quebec ports have easy access to, or maritime access to, Western Europe, and also ground transport links to the rest of North America. And the Quebec government has been very supportive both of the exploration industry in general and also the battery industry itself. In 2020, they announced a $7 billion plan to support the industry and appear to be spending that money. But at the moment, most of that money is really getting spent on downstream projects rather than upstream projects. So we are hoping that some of that capital will find its way upstream to companies like ours.
So Quebec, you and your team have two projects in that region, which one is the Tetepisca Graphite Property, and then you have, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Turgeon?
Turgeon, yeah.
Turgeon. Yeah. So why don't you walk us backwards into 2023, which was, an interesting year for most companies in this space. So why don't you maybe walk us through some of the highlights and the low points, and then we can move to 2024, because I know in 2024 you guys have had some really fantastic news, which we definitely want to talk about. But let's walk backwards for our viewers that might not be familiar with your journey.
Sure. In 2023, in January of 2023, we went public on the CSE. We were operating for about or over 4 years as a private company before that. And we just floated the shares on the CSE. They call it a direct listing. So we didn't know at what price the shares were going to trade. And our first trades were somewhere around $1 per share. And at the time we had about 22 million shares outstanding. And, $1 was probably too high. And the shares, have come down since. And if you look at the charts of most graphite companies out there, listed, you see the same type of formation where, a downward slide over the year 2023. Now, from an operational standpoint, we did a drill program in August and September of last year. It was meant to be a bit earlier, but got delayed by the forest fires in Quebec. And so it was completed in late September, and we're expecting the drill results from that at any moment. So that sums up 2023 for us.
Plus, there was a little bit of a shortage when it came to labs that you could send stuff to, because there's only so many labs and everybody was sending their drill results.
Yeah, that's right. And there was that 1 month at least where the labs weren't getting anything new because of the forest fires. There was a moratorium on drilling, and then everything started to come at once. And so they've had backlogs. So yeah, a drill program completed in late September. We're getting the results this week.
I think it's good timing, especially going into the PDAC conference season. But 2024, very recently, you and your team actually had some fantastic news. I'm going to get you to talk to us about that, summarize it for us, and tell us what this means.
Sure. We did a deal with Volt Carbon Technologies, which is also a listed Canadian company. They are in battery manufacturing and graphite processing. They're developing some lithium-ion batteries, and they entered into an option deal with us to acquire only 5% of the Tetepisca Graphite project. And in exchange for that, we have they will deploy $680,000 this year during 2024 into Tetepisca exploration. And at the end of this year, they then have one further year to decide if they'd like to exercise their option to acquire just 5% of the Tetepisca property for $1.5 million in cash. So, and Volt Carbon in this deal, or through this deal, will become a significant shareholder of EPR. As they spend the $680,000, they will get 6.6 million shares of EPR. So they will be left with a roughly 19% position if you take into account the current share count.
How did you guys come about this? And obviously this has been an ongoing conversation with things like this take quite a while. Talk to us about what your sentiment with current shareholders has been.
In general, very well. It's money we would have to raise ourselves in the open market if we didn't have it. If we didn't have Volt Carbon providing it. So we're not going to pay a finder's fee on raising $680,000, which in itself is a major victory. And
more can go in the ground.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very good in that sense, and it's also on the back of the acquisition of Mason Graphite's flagship deposit in the same Tetepisca Graphite District by Nouveau Monde. It highlights the value of this district because, that cash payment Volt would make to acquire the 5% interest in Tetepisca is $1.5 million in cash, which really it means they're valuing Tetepisca at $30 million plus the exploration cash. So it underpins and perhaps illustrates the value of the Tetepisca property.
And so, James, having this sort of vote of confidence from Volt coming on board, obviously being in a great jurisdiction and a strong team with a great background as well when it comes to exploration and developing projects, how would you say you and your team property differ from some of your differentiate from some of your peers that are in this space?
Well, our strategy is many I guess peers in the graphite space may have started out as mineral exploration companies or mineral development companies and have morphed themselves into more downstream players, more interested in making battery anode material or something like that. We're taking a different approach, which is to show that we have viable graphite, in the ground, and ultimately want to develop a 43101 resource. But at the same time we're doing that, we want to pull graphite out of the ground, and to use that to process and give to end users of the product. So, all these battery manufacturing facilities being erected all over North America, they're going to need graphite. And it's ultimately a man in a lab coat or a woman in a lab coat who makes the decision which graphite works best for our batteries. So we're going to be showing that to them. And Volt Carbon will process material for us to do that. And at the same time, we'll be working to develop a graphite resource in the ground.
So 2024, obviously expecting drill results from last year's program, this partnership with Volt Carbon. Is there any other milestones that viewers can expect from you and your team in the coming 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, I guess, we would like to raise, enough to put at least $1.5 million into the ground at Tetepisca. And that 680 we'll get from Volt Carbon is a great start. We'll have to get the rest from other sources, and we would like to put that into a drill program as soon as possible. Another potential milestone is our Turgeon property. We recently, our neighbors, Probe Gold and Midland Exploration, just had some spectacular polymetallic results just north of our property, and some very long copper, gold, silver, molybdenum intercepts. And so that area could be heating up as well. And our ultimate goal with Turgeon is to find the right option partner for it, and so that EPR can focus its efforts and its income on further exploring Tetepisca.
It's going to be a busy few months then.
It sure should be, yes.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to hosting you on again in the coming months, where we can talk about not only the results you're expecting, but progress on this partnership as well. To everybody watching, you've been listening to James Cross. James is the president, CEO of EPR Resources. It's on the CSE under the symbol EPR. James, again, we really appreciate your time, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Anil, and thanks everybody for listening.